All right, so get ready because we are diving deep today
Deep.
into the world of legendary game developers,
Yeah,
Blizzard Entertainment.
absolutely.
We're talking Warcraft.
Yes.
We are talking Diablo.
Uh-huh.
We are talking Overwatch.
Oh, yeah.
These titans of the gaming world.
It's
And
huge.
this is going to be eye-opening, even if you think
Yeah.
you already know the Blizzard story.
Right.
Because we're going deep
Absolutely, we are.
with Jason Schreier's book, Play Nice,
Yeah.
which is like the ultimate insider's look at Blizzard's rise.
It really
It's them all.
And it all starts, believe it or not, with Pac-Man fever.
Okay.
Picture Southern California in the 80s. Arcades are everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And this young guy, Alan Adam,
Okay.
is having his mind blown not just by the games, but by the idea of making them.
So he's one of those kids who doesn't just want to feed quarters into the machine.
Exactly.
He wants to build the darn thing.
He wants to make it, yeah.
Yeah. And he actually teams up with Brian Fargo before college, who would later go on to found Interplay.
Huge.
Talk about an early education in game day.
Yeah, no kidding.
But then Adam goes to UCLA, and that's where things get interesting.
That's where he meets Mike Morhaime.
Okay.
They bond over this shared love of programming
Right.
and, more importantly, that entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay, so they've got the passion, the skills,
Mm-hmm.
but was there like a single moment where they decided to start a company together?
It's more like Adam, who had this legendary persuasive streak. People called it his Jedi power.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said he could convince anyone of anything.
Wow.
So he convinces Morhaime to take the leap.
Okay.
They co-found Silicon and Synapse in 1991.
And that's the seed that grows into the Blizzard we know today.
It is.
But those early years for any startup are rough.
Oh, tell me about it.
What was it really like for them back then?
Just imagine the pressure.
Yeah.
They took any game conversion contract they could land.
Just to survive.
Oh, yeah, just to keep the lights on. One employee even described it as like a business plan du jour kind of vibe.
Talk about scrappy.
Scrappy, for sure.
But even with those early projects, they were honing their skills.
Yeah.
They were building their reputation.
Right.
And then came that big break with Interplay.
Yeah. They landed a deal to develop 2 original games.
Okay.
One was Rock and Roll Racing,
Okay.
which, by the way, perfectly captured that 90s gaming energy.
Yeah?
And then there's The Lost Vikings, which, funnily enough, started with this idea of controlling hundreds of tiny Vikings.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was too much. They realized that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they had this management by chaos design philosophy.
What does that mean?
So everyone on the team, programmers, artists,
Yeah.
would just pile into a room and hash things out.
Oh, wow. And out of that chaos came the decision to focus on just 3 Vikings?
Exactly. 3 Vikings, each with their own unique skills.
So smart.
And it worked.
It did. And around that time, they bring on Stu Rose,
Oh, yeah.
aspiring cartoonist,
Yeah,
and he becomes a key part of their creative process.
he does.
And what's really interesting is that Rose, along with a bunch of the team,
Yeah.
were obsessed with this new PC game, Dune II.
Interesting.
Little did they know how influential that real-time strategy game would be.
Talk about foreshadowing.
Right. And speaking of influential games, we got to talk about the birth of Warcraft.
Uh-huh.
This is 1993.
Okay.
They've got limited resources,
Right.
but this team is hungry to make their mark.
And maybe cut a few corners along the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the early prototype actually used artwork straight from Dune II.
Wow, no way.
It's kind of a Wild West story,
Yeah.
but it shows how scrappy they were and how willing they were to experiment.
It's like they had this gut feeling for what worked,
They did.
even if it meant bending the rules a little.
A little bit, yeah.
And then you have programmer Pat Wyatt,
Right.
who was tasked with leading Warcraft's development.
Huge responsibility.
He pioneers the ability to select and control multiple units with the mouse,
Oh.
which was revolutionary at that
Yeah,
time.
sure.
And then you've got Adam always thinking strategically.
Oh, yeah.
He pushes to actually limit the number of units players can select at once.
Interesting. Why?
He believes it'll force more strategic thinking.
Fascinating.
So you can see how those early design decisions were made by intuition.
And a deep understanding of gameplay.
Exactly. And they would shape the entire experience.
They did.
But as Warcraft is taking shape, there's another twist in the story.
What's that?
Bob Davidson from Davidson and Associates,
Okay.
this educational software company,
Right.
he sees something special in this scrappy team,
Really?
which at this point,
Yeah.
their portfolio is all over the place. They're
Yeah.
working on this Warcraft game,
Right.
but they also had like a fighting game based on Superman comics.
Wow. So random.
But Davidson saw their potential,
He did.
and that acquisition for $6.75 million changes everything.
Wow.
Suddenly they've got stability,
Right.
resources,
Yes.
the freedom to develop their own original games.
That's huge.
But before they could fully embrace the name Blizzard,
Yeah.
there was a little detour.
What happened?
Remember Chaos Studios?
Oh, yeah?
They had to ditch that name.
Why?
Trademark issues.
Oh, no.
Ogre Studios was briefly on the table.
Ogre Studios. Really?
Thankfully, Bob Davidson stepped in, realizing that might not fly with parents.
Good to call.
And that's how they landed on Blizzard,
Wow.
the name that would become synonymous with epic gaming experiences.
It's crazy how one trademark issue could have changed everything.
Right.
Fate had other plans.
It did. They had a new name, financial stability, a string of successful games under their belt.
Yeah.
Blizzard was ready for greatness.
They were just getting started. And you know what's coming next.
Yeah, Warcraft 2.
But this time, it's not just about building on a successful game.
Right.
It's about building a world.
Okay.
And that's where Chris Metzen comes in.
That's it.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a storyteller. He was a world builder.
Mm.
Like, in the truest sense of the word. Did he have a background in fantasy or mythology or anything like that?
It's actually more interesting than that.
Okay.
Metzen was a young artist.
Yeah.
Still in his early 20s when he joined a Blizzard.
Wow.
What he brought was this raw talent for storytelling. There's the ability to take that existing Warcraft lore and just breathe life into it.
Yeah.
He created characters you cared about, conflicts that felt real,
Right.
and that epic scope that just draws you in.
And the gaming world ate it up.
They did.
Warcraft 2 was a phenomenon.
Huge.
It wasn't just a game, it was an obsession.
It really was.
I remember hearing stories about tech support calls where like players' wives were practically begging them to get off the game.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
It's that level of immersion
Yeah.
that Blizzard was becoming known for.
Sure.
But they weren't done yet.
Not even close.
No. We got to talk about Diablo.
Oh, yeah, Diablo.
That project actually started with a different team,
It did.
Condor Studios.
Right. Led by David Brebick.
Okay, so now we've got this other group of passionate developers
Yeah.
working on a game that would become iconic.
They really were.
What was it about Diablo that caught Blizzard's attention?
We have to remember, this is the mid-90s.
Okay.
The idea of a dark Gothic RPG that was pretty novel.
That was different.
Breivik and his team had this really gritty, atmospheric vision for it.
Oh, wow.
They were actually on the verge of giving up on the whole thing
Really?
when fate intervened.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what happened?
Adam,
Yeah.
always on the lookout for the next big thing,
Of course.
he sees the potential in Diablo,
Okay.
but he's got a bigger vision for it.
What's he thinking?
He wants multiplayer.
Okay.
He wants real-time gameplay elements that Breivik was kind of resistant to at first.
Oh, really? So we have these two strong personalities,
Yeah.
these clashing visions.
Right.
What happens next is crucial.
What happens is you have a master class in creative tension.
Oh.
Instead of one side steamrolling the other, they find a way to blend their ideas.
Oh, wow. They challenge each other. They push the game further.
And that's how you get Diablo.
And that's how you get Diablo.
It's a game that defined a genre.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the best ideas come from that friction,
Totally.
from those moments where you're forced to defend your vision, but also find that common ground.
Absolutely.
But even with Diablo's success, things weren't always smooth sailing within Blizzard, were they?
Definitely not. No.
What was going on?
Remember all those clashes over code, the different work styles?
That's right. Yeah.
Pat Wyatt, one of the original Warcraft programmers,
Yeah.
he talked about how he was working around the clock to implement Battle.net for Diablo,
Okay.
and it seemed like some of the Diablo team were less than thrilled.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow. So again, it goes back to those different personalities, those
Yeah.
different approaches to work.
right.
But what's fascinating is they still managed to come together and create something incredible.
They did.
And then came StarCraft.
Start the game that would test those limits even further.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just about pushing technological boundaries.
Right.
It was about pushing the team to its limits.
It really was a pressure cooker.
Yeah, what was the development process like for that?
Intense, long hours,
Yeah,
creative clashes,
of course.
and then eventually the departure of some key developers who would go on to found ArenaNet, the studio behind Guild Wars.
Okay, so it's a reminder that even in a company as successful as Blizzard,
Right.
there's a human cost to making these games.
There is.
People burn out.
Yeah.
They have different visions.
Right.
And sometimes those paths diverge.
They do, and it's also a testament to the cyclical nature of the industry, right?
It's true.
These developers who left, they took their experiences, their knowledge, and they created something new.
Right.
It's a constant flow of ideas and talent.
That's a really good point. And all of this is happening while Blizzard's parent company, Vivendi, is going through its own turmoil.
Oh, yeah. Total chaos.
There are all these rumors of a sale,
Right.
whispers of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Imagine that pressure on the team.
I can't even... A game?
Creating a game as ambitious as StarCraft, with all of that hanging over their heads.
It's remarkable they got anything done.
It is, and yet amidst all of that,
Yeah?
amidst the internal tensions and the corporate drama, something truly groundbreaking was taking shape.
What's that?
World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft. The game that would change everything.
It would, but before we step into Azeroth,
Okay.
let's just appreciate how much Blizzard had already achieved.
Had come so far.
They went from converting arcade games
Right?
to creating some of the most influential PC games of all time.
It's an amazing story.
They had this knack for tapping into what gamers wanted.
They just got it.
They did, for creating worlds that felt real,
Yes.
and for building communities that extended far beyond the games themselves.
Absolutely.
So we're back and picking up our deep dive with Blizzard, about to unleash World of Warcraft on the world. You already talked about the pressure. They were under internal tensions, a parent company in turmoil.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So how in the world did they manage to create
Well,
World of Warcraft?
this is where that whole management by chaos thing really gets put to the test.
How so?
They're not just building a game at this point. They're building a world.
Right.
Like a living, breathing world with its own history, its own rules.
It's a huge undertaking.
Absolutely monumental.
And they're also competing with themselves in a way, right?
Leslie.
How do you top the success of Warcraft and Diablo?
Exactly. It's like, how do you outdo yourself?
Right. So how did that impact the development of World of Warcraft?
It pushed them to innovate, but it also created this insane amount of pressure.
Yeah, because they knew what they were capable of.
Right. And they were so aware of their legacy and the expectations of their fans.
I bet.
There's this story in the book about a tester who was so passionate about the game.
Okay.
He created this crazy detailed 3D environment on his own time. And Blizzard, being Blizzard, they saw his talent and promoted him to the development team.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
Right. But even with all the talent in the world,
Yeah,
game development is tough.
it is.
And World of Warcraft was uncharted territory.
Absolutely. Were there any major setbacks
Oh, yeah,
where it felt like the whole thing might fall apart?
constantly. The technical challenges alone were mind-boggling.
Like what?
Building a world that could handle thousands of players at the same time,
Oh,
creating systems for quests, economies, even just social interactions.
it's massive.
It was groundbreaking. And remember, this is all happening while Vivendi's still trying to sell them off,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
creating this constant uncertainty in the background.
And then in the middle of all of this,
Mhm.
Adam,
Right.
one of the original founders,
Yeah.
decides to leave Blizzard.
Big loss.
What was the impact of that?
I mean, huge Adam was like the heart of the company, the visionary leader,
Yeah.
but it also showed how intense it was. Game development is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not.
And sometimes you got to choose yourself,
Yeah.
even if it means walking away from something you love.
And that's what he did. So despite all of that, despite the challenges, the uncertainty,
Somehow,
World of Warcraft launches in 2004.
it does.
And it's not just a success.
Right.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
It took over the world.
It did millions of players all over,
Everyone.
logging in, creating characters,
It was huge.
living out their fantasies in this digital world that Blizzard created.
It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen.
Unprecedented. And I bet even Blizzard was shocked by its success.
They were blown away. Their servers were overloaded. They couldn't keep up with the demand.
That's the kind of problem you want to have, though, right?
Oh, for sure. But it shows you the double-edged sword of success.
What do you mean?
How do you keep that momentum going?
Right.
How do you maintain that level of engagement, that sense of wonder over time?
Especially as the company grows, as the industry changes.
Exactly. And that's where the Activision era really comes into focus.
Right. The merger in 2008. Huge news.
Massive.
You've got these two gaming giants coming together. But their cultures, their approaches, so different.
Complete opposites.
What was the immediate impact on Blizzard?
There's this shift, a subtle but significant change in atmosphere.
Okay.
They moved to a bigger campus.
Yeah.
There's a ton of new employees.
Right.
And suddenly the pressure to deliver financial results,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes more pronounced.
So it's not an overnight takeover,
No.
but the seeds of change are planted.
Exactly.
And some of those changes played out in a very public way.
They did.
The clash with KESPA, the Korean Esports Association, over StarCraft.
Oh, yeah, that was big.
Big deal what happened there.
So it really exposed this fundamental tension between Blizzard wanting to control its intellectual property.
Okay, which makes sense.
Especially in this new world of esports.
Right.
And then on the other side, you have the established StarCraft culture in South Korea, which had flourished under KESPA's guidance.
So it was like this clash of cultures almost.
It really was.
And for Blizzard, it was about more than just the game.
Absolutely.
It was about navigating this new territory.
Right.
This whole idea of games as a global spectator sport.
Right.
Which was still new at the time.
It was, and they didn't always get it right.
And then there was that whole Diablo 3 auction house controversy.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So the idea was to create a secure in-game marketplace.
Okay.
But it totally backfired.
How so?
Players felt like they were being pushed towards real money transactions.
Oh, I see.
That the game's balance was being messed with.
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is.
Trying to monetize a game without compromising the gameplay.
Yeah, and it really highlighted this disconnect with Blizzard's old reputation for putting gameplay first and Activision's more
business-minded approach.
Exactly.
And then there's Titan.
Kite.
This mythical project that loomed over Blizzard for years.
It was like this legend.
What can you tell us about this game that never was?
Titan was Blizzard's attempt to recapture the magic of World of Warcraft.
Okay.
To create the next big MMO.
The next big thing.
They put everything into it.
I bet years of development.
Years.
The best talent.
The best.
What happened?
It just became this black hole, a victim of its own ambition.
Wow.
And maybe a changing gaming landscape.
It's kind of sad when you think about it.
It is a little bit.
All that creative energy, all those ideas.
Yeah.
That ultimately went nowhere.
But even as Titan was falling apart,
Yeah.
there was something else brewing.
What's that?
The small team, led by Ben Brode, was working on this little card game called Hearthstone.
Hearthstone, yeah.
It was different for Blizzard.
It was.
But it still had that Blizzard magic.
Right, that blend of strategy, polish, and fun.
Exactly, and it blew up.
It did. Hearthstone proved that Blizzard could still innovate.
For sure.
That they could reach a new generation of gamers.
Absolutely.
But behind the scenes, those tensions between the old Blizzard and the new Activision-influenced Blizzard, they were still there.
Simmering.
And then came the departures of some really key figures like Frank Pierce, Chris Metzen.
Huge losses.
These were the veterans, the guardians of Blizzard's legacy.
They were.
And their absence was felt deeply by a lot of people.
It was. And then BlizzCon 2018.
Oh, yeah.
The Diablo Immortal announcement.
Whatever you think about mobile gaming,
right?
That announcement, it just felt off.
It felt off to a lot of people.
Why do you think that was?
I think it was more than just about the game itself.
Okay.
It was about what that announcement represented.
Which one was?
This shift away from Blizzard's PC gaming roots.
Right.
The prioritization of mobile markets and monetization strategies.
Right.
That just felt wrong.
At odds with what people loved about Blizzard.
Exactly.
It felt like a betrayal.
To a lot of longtime fans, it did.
Yeah. A sign that maybe Blizzard was losing its way.
And in the years that followed, those cracks became fissures.
And then the lawsuit in 2021. Alleging a toxic work environment.
Right.
Particularly for women.
It was a huge wake-up call.
It was a reckoning.
The allegations were awful.
They were really disturbing.
Painting this picture of a company struggling with some serious systemic issue.
A culture that had allowed harassment and discrimination to go unchecked for too long.
Too long.
And it led to a mass exodus of talent.
It did.
This tarnished reputation, this sense that Blizzard was at a crossroads.
They were, and that's when Microsoft stepped in.
Right, with that massive $69 billion acquisition.
Just like that.
It's still early.
It is.
But what does this new chapter mean for Blizzard?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. Can they recapture that magic?
Yeah.
Can they rebuild that trust that's been broken?
Can they? I don't know.
It's an open question.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Blizzard's history, it feels less like an ending and more like the beginning of a new uncertain chapter. It really does.
Blizzard's story, it's a reminder that even the most successful companies,
the untouchables,
the ones that seem like they can do no wrong, They're always evolving,
Always.
for better or for worse.
Yeah, and the decisions they make, the culture they build,
Yeah.
that's their legacy.
That's what they'll be remembered for. And for those of us who grew up with these games,
Right.
who poured countless hours into Azeroth's Sanctuary,
Out to those worlds.
all those worlds,
Yeah.
it's a reminder that even in a digital world,
Yeah.
the human element,
It matters.
it's everything. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.